One move yesterday by the Nashville Predators has us watching the waiver wire closely. Plus, two former Predators return to Bridgestone Arena tonight. We're going to talk about what went wrong with Cody Glass and Philip Tomasino in Nashville and tell you what the Predators are hoping to accomplish tonight that they haven't done in 2 months.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, Junior, everyone, as we like to call our Thursdays here. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your Monday through Friday Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We do want to kick off our game day episode welcoming any first-time listeners and, of course, giving a shout out and a high five to our Locked On Predators insiders and to our everydayers. We appreciate your support. We love talking Nashville Predators hockey with you. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
If you tuned into yesterday's episode, you know that not only is Emma my partner in crime, she's also my one phone call from jail. So you've tuned in at a really great time. We were talking about prison yesterday. Today's show, probably not as much jail talk, but we do have a lot to get into. Nashville made a move yesterday that could signal some really good news for the Nashville Predators, but does maybe have Emma and I in our feels just a little bit. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk to you about the Preds hosting Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to preview that game, and we're going to reflect back on a couple players who will take the ice at Bridgestone Arena in black and gold tonight. Before we dive into that, want to let you know today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma, let's just start with the elephant in the room, whose name is Marc Del Gaizo. Marc Del Gaizo, of course, we had a whole segment on Marc Del Gaizo because Marc Del Gaizo lost it in the game against the New York Rangers. But we have been big fans of Del Gaizo's game. We've watched him kind of develop in Milwaukee after being drafted and just really have liked his game. He's been up here in Nashville. Yesterday, the Predators placed Del Gaizo on waivers. Now, of course, we here at Locked On Predators / Locked On Marc Del Gaizo, we know what he brings. We know a lot about his game. This is a really good defenseman that we've really enjoyed watching. But Emma, how concerned are you that Elliot Friedman is going to break our hearts with waiver news?
All due respect to Marc Del Gaizo, and I mean, I think you and I love him, I would say, just as much as the next person, but easily more than the next person. I just don't think that the rest of the league is as high on him as we are. So I don't think that we should be especially concerned about him being on waivers. I mean, presumably he clears. This is a player that doesn't have a lot of NHL experience. It's not the same as putting like a Dante Fabro on waivers, for example. And so yes, he's young and he's promising and he's, we love him here, but I think this is just a move, obviously, to presumably reassign him to Milwaukee once he clears waivers. And it probably indicates, as you said, could be something really good for the Predators, which is that one of the three injured defensemen, Roman Josi, Alex Carrier, or Jeremy Lauzon, is likely going to slot back into the lineup. My educated guess is Josi. He is day to day. He's day to day. The other two are on injured reserve. Not that can't change, but it seems to me that Josi was, just from observing and practice and skates and everything, I think he was closer to returning. So that's a very good thing. The Predators, having Roman Josi in the lineup, I think is never going to be a bad thing. So Yeah, it's a bummer for Del Gaizo, but he'll be back. I'm really not concerned that he doesn't clear.
Yeah. And here's the thing, just for the rest of the day until we find out, this is Locked On Who's Marc Del Gaizo, because we don't want anybody in on the secret that, like Nashville has a crop of really good young defensemen, one of whom's name is Marc Del Gaizo. So just everybody, we're not talking about him
for all of the NHL GMs who are probably regular listeners of this show. He's actually not. Yeah, he's not that great.
He's just okay for us.
He's all right.
He's just okay. Yeah. But I agree with you. This does signal really good news. Man, I tell you what, when Nashville lost 3 of their top 4 defensemen, you think, man, could things get worse? And we really saw Del Gaizo step up, Blankenburg, Wilsby, and Kevin Gravel was recalled from Milwaukee too and stepped up. And you got to love what we've seen from them. But to get one of those 3 back, and I am with you, we saw them skate Tuesday morning. There was no skate on Wednesday. And all 3 of them were out there on the ice. But my guess is it's probably Josi. This is a really good thing for Nashville, especially tonight against the Pittsburgh Penguins. You really do want to get your captain back. I will say this. It is interesting to me how big an impact Adam Wilsby has had in the short amount of time we've seen him. And that takes nothing away from, of course, Del Gaizo. I think Mr. Blankenburg has been phenomenal. I think he came out and people were like, didn't know we had you. And he has been really great as well. But I think that this little stretch has really highlighted just some of the uniqueness to Adam Wilsby that, we haven't really talked a ton about. The other thing I will say is Milwaukee will welcome Del Gaizo back with open arms. Yesterday, they had a school day game against the Chicago Wolves. They lost 4-1. And I think they're really missing some of the pieces that have been recalled. So, it'll be a good thing for Milwaukee. It would be a great thing for the Nashville Predators to get Roman Josi or Lizotte or Carrier back in the lineup tonight for sure. When we get them all back, Emma, we're just going to play a fun game of pure educated speculation. It's one of our favorite games. When we get Josi, Carrier, and Lizotte back, who do you see staying and who do you see maybe heading back?
Well, all respect to Kevin Gravel, but I think it's expected that he will end up going back. The reason that you keep him, and I saw a little bit of this, like, why are we sending Del Gaizo back and not Gravel? Well, again, there's certainly an argument to be made. They're both excellent defensemen. They've been, very Andrew Burnett talked about this. They each bring their own thing to the table. And what Gravel brings that unfortunately Del Gaizo does not is his size. And when you don't have Jeremy Lizotte or Roman Josi, even he's a bigger defenseman, that's where you need a Gravel. And so that's where a Del Gaizo becomes a little bit more expendable in that sense. But I think that, once Lizotte is back, that's when you can get rid of Gravel. Not get rid of, but that's where he's not as necessary anymore. So I'd say he's the first to go. Quite honestly, again, I have been so impressed with Nick Blankenburg.
Yes.
And Wilsby too. Well, I said this on yesterday's show. I said, I don't know that he's going back to Milwaukee. I mean, we saw that he would have been the obvious choice of the 3 because he is, or of the 4, I guess, because he doesn't have to pass through waivers to go back to Milwaukee. So that would have been the easy one. But it's like, it's clear that, we like what he's done here and he has made a case to stay on this roster. And so I like that they're rewarding him for that. And I think that it's going to be hard because, Blankenburg is a guy who does have NHL experience, not a ton, but he does.
A little bit. Yep.
And, he could be a guy that may have caught some people's eyes too. I think that it's all going to depend on timing though, because if let's say all 3 of those guys come back tomorrow and all of those guys get placed on waivers or get sent back to Milwaukee, right now at this point in the season, not that many teams are going to be looking for, like these kind of
Yes.
slapdash waiver wire pickups, because they're not crawling and scraping to the finish line of the season with, whatever they have. And so again, if a player goes on waivers and gets snatched up at this point in the season, it's probably going to be like a Dante Fabro, like a former first round pick, someone with a lot of NHL experience who can be an impact player at the NHL level right now. And all due respect to all of those guys that I just mentioned, but I don't think any of them are there right now.
Mhm.
And at this point in the season, if teams do have holes to fill on their roster, they're likely going to reach into their own farm systems to do that.
I agree with you on that. It just makes me a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. I do
I know
think
how
it's,
you worry.
how I worry, but
do.
I also think, names we hear come up at the trade deadline, Lausanne and Carrier last year, a lot of rumors around them. And while I would hate to see that happen, I think Nashville Predators fans have to feel good that like you have gotten an eye on what is available in Milwaukee. And we haven't even talked about Ryan Ufko. We haven't talked about Tanner Mullendijk. Spencer Stastny hasn't been up here yet. And so just a credit to the development of these defensemen who have been able to step up in really tough circumstances with this Predators team and be impact players. So I think that there's something very reassuring about what these guys have done collectively for the franchise as well. Coming up, we are going to talk about a couple other players who are no longer here. That's right. Pittsburgh Penguins come to town, and with them, Cody Glass and Phil Tomasino. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. If you love sports, you are going to love Prize Picks. It's the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it is hockey, football, or any of your other favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money at Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they are giving away over $30 million in rewards during Picksmas, and they are offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. That's right. You're going to get $50 instantly after playing that first $5 lineup. So check out all the action and all the deals at Prize Picks. Run your game. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Stanley Cup Finals. Look, the world's top athletes get to play in these top level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safe. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while Select Quote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. If you are in good health, they work with carriers that could get you same-day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and these policies are more affordable than you think. You could get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 per month. Head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. All right, Emma, this is one of those games that always gives me internal angst. Being a girl from Pennsylvania, lived in Pittsburgh for a little while, and of course, my extended family, all Penguins fans. So just a lot of like interfamily internal turmoil, but we got to face it. Penguins coming to town tonight. Sidney Crosby and the gang are coming into town. And this Pittsburgh team, and they've been through it too. We're going to talk about kind of what they have been through and where these two teams are coming up a little bit later in this episode. But with the Penguins come a couple of former Nashville Predators. And these are names that also cause a little internal angst, if we're being honest with this fan base. Let's just start off. Of course, we want to give a shout out to Anthony Beauvillier. We hardly knew you. 15 games with the Predators last year. He is now in Pittsburgh. He's played 33 games there. He has 8 goals, 11 points. So salute to Anthony Beauvillier. I think we could pick him out of a crowd. But let's talk about Cody Glass. Cody Glass, 6th overall pick in 2017, of course, by the Vegas Golden Knights, and came to Nashville in 2021. There was a 3-way trade. Vegas, Philly, Nashville got together, cut a deal, and ended up with Cody Glass. But man, his tenure in Nashville, full of ups and downs. In total, he played 121 regular season games in Nashville, 20 goals, 49 points. Only ever made appearances in 2 postseason games for the Nashville Predators. He is now in Pittsburgh, 20 games, 1 goal, 7 points. He is kind of playing 4th line minutes, coincidentally, with our good friend Anthony Beauvillier. He has missed some games due to injury, upper body injury, but I think it was a concussion, which also, you know how I worry. One of the things that Andrew Brunette said at the end of last season before Cody Glass was traded is that he needed to find his why. And it was a rough season for Glass. Several injuries and healthy scratching. Why didn't Cody Glass work here, Emma?
Well, I think it's unfortunately, it's kind of been the story of his entire career, which is that, you know, he gets drafted. He's a high draft pick by Vegas. He then, you know, he's dealt with injury setbacks his entire career. And so he had injuries, was set back in his development timeline. At that point, Vegas was in win now mode. And so they really didn't have the chance, or they didn't have the luxury of time with Glass. You know, it's not like, well, let's wait for you to develop and be patient with you. They couldn't really do that because of where they were in their timeline. He wasn't going to help them now. That's what they needed him. So they ship him off to Nashville. He, again, injuries and whatnot. He ends up down in Milwaukee, has a really good season in Milwaukee, his first year here. Comes up for the postseason, like you said, didn't really make any noise there. Then again, we all remember when he made the team, made the roster out of training camp the next year, and he cried. And he, you know, that was it was a bit of a renaissance for him in 2022-23. You know, he managed to stick at the NHL level the entire year. Of course, posted career highs in every offensive category, but that's also because that was the most games he'd played at the NHL level before. So it was good to see. You thought he was trending upwards, and, you know, going into the off season, we thought like, okay, this was the Cody Glass that we thought we were getting, and it only goes up from here. And then, as you mentioned, last season, multiple injuries, different injuries. He was on the injured list. He was on IR 2 different times for 2 different injuries, so missed a lot of time. Even when he wasn't injured, he was a healthy scratch. It was just rough going. He really struggled last year. And we said going into the offseason, we talked to him, and he looked like a man possessed. And he was like, I'm going to work my butt off. And I am not that, you know, this past season, that's not me. And I'm better than this. And I'm going to put my head down and work. Then July 1st comes around. Barry Trotz spends $100 million in one day.
As one does.
Now. Yeah. I mean, who among us hasn't? He does that. And all of a sudden it's Vegas all over again. The Predators, by doing that, signal that they're in win now mode. Cody Glass, unfortunately, is a player that did not help them win right now. It's not to say that he's not valuable or doesn't have a place or, you know, didn't bring good things to the table, but Nashville was suddenly no longer in the same position that they had been with him the last, you know, couple of seasons, because the last couple of seasons, Nashville was not in win now mode. And it was like, yeah, we're competitive.
It's different.
We're competitive, but this is not our year. Like, you know, and so they could be patient with Glass. all of a sudden, it turns into Vegas again, and he just did not fit into the timeline. And so he goes to Pittsburgh, where he gets to be part of, a youth movement. And he is the kind of player that Pittsburgh is looking for.
Mhm.
They've got this aging core in Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and then and Minka is just really upset. Do you hear
They're
this?
so old, Minka
They're
says. They're
so
so old.
Minka, can you believe how old they are? My gosh, she's sorry.
broken.
Just really got a problem with that. Yes, I know. But I think that they're looking for an influx of youth, and they're looking for players who can, like a guy like Glass and even like Phil Tomasino. They have
Mhm.
they're young, but they also have NHL experience. It's not like
Right.
they're prospects. And so I think that it kind of gives them that influx of youth that they're looking for.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that was so challenging for Cody Glass, and I will say this, I'm not putting all of this on Andrew Brunette, but it's one of those situations where you're like, okay, the buck sort of stops with the head coach. So somewhere in the process, it was hard to see Glass struggle because he struggled with confidence. He struggled to trust himself after those injuries. And I feel like maybe a little bit more support through that would have been helpful for Cody Glass. And that's one of those things that I keep filed away in the back of my mind when it comes to Andrew Brunette. And again, I'm not saying that directly it is his job to do that, but I think when you have a player that struggled with the mental aspect of the game as much as Glass did, you really want to see work being done to get that back. And, we've talked about this, healthy scratching players after a mistake, young players, that's difficult. It's difficult for them. And how do you work through that? But I agree with you. A lot of what happened with Glass was circumstantial with what Barry Trotz did. Phil Tomasino he is a really interesting one. We're going to talk about sort of his trajectory, not just here in Nashville, which is something we've talked about a bit more, but what do things look like for him now in Pittsburgh? Plus, we're going to tell you keys to that game tonight. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it is all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, and it's all going to be right there on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Tonight will be the first time back for Phil Tomasino. He was traded again in late November. I don't know that you had to be, some sort of mystic to figure out that Phil Tomasino's days with the Nashville Predators were numbered, because this is a player who just couldn't find his spot consistently under two different head coaches, under two different general managers. And it wasn't a lack of Phil Tomasino having talent. It's just that he wasn't giving them what they wanted from him. And what is so interesting to me, Emma, when I look back at Phil Tomasino's time in Nashville, in some ways, and I'm not comparing player to player, but I'm just saying kind of situation to situation. It's interesting to watch Zachary Leroux, because Zach Leroux came in and he was your fourth line guy. And if you remember, Phil Tomasino and Michael McCarron, those guys had their line and they had sort of not a top six identity. Zach Leroux has come in, but he has done enough to find himself now playing top 6 minutes. And, again, you can't compare games necessarily, Phil Tomasino to Zach Leroux, but that just never really fleshed out for Tomasino here in Nashville. He didn't really ever get that, hey, you've shown us enough. We're going to give you consistent top 6 minutes. He is now with Pittsburgh, living his best life. He is playing on a line with Evgeny Malkin, living his best life. And I think so much of it is frustrated as fans get when Nashville loses a first round pick. This is one of those situations where fresh start means fresh start. And that's what he needed, I think.
For sure. I mean, we were saying this during the off season. He was like the last RFA to sign in the off season. It was like I think we even thought, at least I thought, I was like, yeah, he's getting traded.
It took forever.
It took forever. So I think that in hindsight, we should now basically know that Barry Trotz was trying to trade him during the offseason. Didn't, we don't know what the circumstances were. Don't know if he didn't get a deal that he liked, whatever, but ended up being able to trade him to Pittsburgh and got a draft pick out of it. I think that, again, like you said, it was just one of those guys that had kind of fallen out of favor in Nashville, and he was just a prime change of scenery guy. It was because it was that rookie season. He had that amazing rookie season. He came in, it was the COVID year, and he was the great white knight that was, coming in and saving everything. And like, this was the present and the future. And this is so exciting. And then he just kind of leveled after that. And not saying like he just was terrible, but he just never quite, replicated that same level of production after that rookie season. And then you come in again, different head coach, different GM, and still, you're not seeing any kind of difference there. So I think that he is, a guy that was better, and we saw this. He's a guy that's better the more consistent ice time he gets, and he wasn't getting that in Nashville. I will also say, not to open up another can of worms, but who else is better when he gets more consistent ice time?
Say it.
Parsonen.
How about that?
Parsonen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but I think that there is a lot to be said for his, just like you said, it's just circumstantial. It's circumstantial. And I think that it was, obviously Phil Tomasino is a fan favorite in Nashville, understandably so. He's a great kid.
Great guy.
But I think that this is just a much better situation for him. Again, he gets to join that old core. Minka, don't yell at me.
Don't squawk about it.
Yeah, they're old. I'm sorry. But I think that he now, and I remember watching a post game with him after it was one of his first games with Pittsburgh, and he was playing with Malkin. He had scored a goal in the game, and people asked him, like, what is it like being able to play with like kind of a living legend in Evgeny Malkin? And he's like, well, it's actually kind of great because everyone just looks at him. Everyone focuses on him. It frees me up to go do my thing. So like at this point, Malkin's almost the distraction,
the decoy.
And then Phil Tomasino can go do his thing. And again, I don't think Nashville really, like, during Phil Tomasino's time here, they didn't really have anyone like that. They didn't have, like Philip Forsberg
not that played anywhere near him though.
No.
He never played anywhere near like a Philip Forsberg.
Philip Forsberg would have been the closest, comparison there, but they, he was never playing with him. And so it was, and even then, like now you're seeing a similar thing in Nashville now, like guys flocking to Stamkos on the power play when the Preds are on the power play. It's like, that's what they do to Malkin in Pittsburgh. And so that frees Tomasino up to be like, I'm gonna just go scoot this into the net. Thanks. And so it's a nice situation for him. You're seeing him like get his confidence back a little bit. He has a clear, like a defined role on this team. And that is something
he never had.
He never had. After his rookie season, he never had that in Nashville.
And they couldn't find and this is why I watch Zach LaRue. They couldn't find the spot to land between Tomasino's offensive game and sort of what the role they cast him in originally with, McCarron on that bottom six line. Like there was no middle ground where they could land him. And that's why I find it really interesting to see Zach LaRue, who is that kind of fourth line identity grinder puck hunting guy, but also has that high offense as well. And again, you can't compare player to player and game skill to game skill, but you got to find that spot where you can capitalize on both. And when Tomasino was here, they didn't have that spot. Like they just couldn't find that spot for him. Maybe it was there and they just weren't looking, but they didn't find it. I think it's interesting. Both Glass and Tomasino are getting time on the second power play unit in Pittsburgh as well, which is something that I think is good for both of them. Tonight, the Preds are going to look to do something they have not done for 2 months, y'all, and that is win back-to-back games. The last time the only time the Nashville Predators have won back-to-back games, October 22nd against Boston, October 25th against Chicago. Hopefully, they have built up some momentum with these last couple of games where we're really seeing this team's identity. When you look at this game, Emma, like what is kind of one key to this game for you?
Well, I think consistency again. Bill, we've talked about this after the Rangers game that we've now seen, we haven't seen 3 wins in a row, but we have
Heaven
seen
forbid
3 consecutive very good performances in a row and strong performances where they're going to win more games than they lose when they play like that. And so I think that they need to keep that going. And, yes, they're playing against the Rangers, who are a struggling team. Pittsburgh had a slow start to the season, but they're 7-2-1 in their last 10. I mean, they have, you talk about enigmas, like the Predators have been an enigma with like, why are they this bad? To start the season. It seems like they're starting to figure it out. But the Penguins have just been a complete enigma where it's like, what are they? What is this team? It's like they moved heaven and earth to be able to bring this veteran core back, to kind of give it one last shot. But then they didn't build a team around them. And so now you saw them struggling as a result of that. So I think that, they're catching a Pittsburgh team that has been hot. They've been hot over the last 10 games, but at the same time, they are desperate. This is a desperate team. They may not be there now. It's not like the Rangers. The Penguins right now are only 1 point out of a wild card spot. So like the season, not all is lost for them. But I say that they're desperate and that they're very aware of the roster situation that they're in. And, they really are, now that they're starting to capture, they're starting to catch fire here. They're going to try to keep winning to do it, for Crosby, for Malkin, for Letang, for those guys, because otherwise, it really just kind of the identity of this whole team just takes a hit. So I think that Nashville, of course, is desperate. You look at Nashville and a lot of people, you might think, oh, the season's already lost because they had such a bad start, but they should be matching desperation levels with Pittsburgh. Just like they did, against the Rangers. That was 2 very desperate teams playing against each other. And so I think that they need to match the desperation level. They need to maximize what they have, the advantages they have. I would say the big advantage is goaltending.
100%. Yeah.
They need to play the same level of defense they did against the Rangers. But maybe, score more than 2 goals might be nice, but
Yeah, goal scoring. And I know this is like Captain Obvious showed up to the podcast today, but goal scoring is going to be huge in this game because Pittsburgh wins big or loses big.
Yeah.
They've scored 5 or more goals in 8 games and won. They have given up 5 or more goals in 7 games and have lost. Now, can you imagine a 5-goal game for the Nashville Predators? Literally, Bridgestone would blow the roof off. But Nashville has to get pucks in the back of the net. They've got to score goals because while Pittsburgh may give up a lot, they can score a lot. And so Nashville they just got to find the back of the net. And I do think that goaltending is an advantage for Nashville. I think if Roman Josi is back in the lineup, that's a big advantage for Nashville as well, offensively and defensively. Now, we will wait to hear this morning for any sort of official word on who is returning back to the lineup, and we'll keep you posted on that as well. Of course, on tomorrow's show, we're going to recap this game against the Penguins. We're going to let you know how Cody and how Phil Tomasino do in this game. And of course, let you know our one word to describe whatever we see tonight at Bridgestone Arena. This is their second game in a 4-game homestand before the Christmas holidays. So can they get back-to-back wins for the second time this season? We'll let you know on tomorrow's show. Before we log off today, Emma, where can everyone find you and your work?
You can find me at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with a game recap and to celebrate a Friday. We'll see you then.